Basically, that means this is me, this is Jane.
If conservation had rock stars, this woman would be Mick Jagger, Bob Dylan, John Lennon, and Elvis all wrapped up in one.
She's a star. She loves being a star.
She was always an inspiration to me. She was always one of those women and one of those voices that just helped me feel better about life and how to approach life, and I had hoped.
Dr. Goodall, David and I would like to present you with the Global Explorers Citizens of the World Award.
When I was growing up, I lived in England, and we did not have very much money at all. There was a war, and my father was away fighting in the army, and I loved books. And I found a little book about this size, and I just had enough money to buy it. And it was called Tarzan of the Apes. When I read that book when I was 10 years old, that I decided, I know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm going to go to Africa, I'm going to live with animals, and I'm going to write books about them. That was my dream. And everybody laughed at me. How would I get to Africa? There was a war raging. We didn't have any money. There were no planes going back and forth. And I was just a girl. And back then in England, girls didn't have those opportunities. So everybody laughed at me and said, Jane, why don't you get real? Why don't you dream about something you can achieve? Forget this nonsense about Africa, except my mother. And she said to me, Jane, if you really want something, you're going to have to work very hard. You're going to have to take advantage of opportunity and never give up. I couldn't go to university because we didn't have enough money, but I got a job in London as a secretary and saved up my money and saved up my money. And then I got a letter from a school friend inviting me to Kenya, and I still didn't have nearly enough money. And so I went home where I didn't have to pay rent, and I worked as a waitress, and it was jolly hard work for about 4 months, serving people's breakfast, lunch and dinner. And eventually I had enough money saved up for a return fare to Africa by boat. And then I got there, stayed with my friend, heard about Louis Leakey, and as many of you know, it was Louis Leakey who gave me the opportunity to go and learn about not just any animals, but chimpanzees, the animals most like us. And when I began studying the chimpanzees in 1960, nobody knew anything about chimps in the wild. I was so lucky because nobody knew anything. And the big problem, of course, at the beginning was that the chimps had never seen a white person before, and they took one look and they would run off into the vegetation. And I was desperate because I knew that if I didn't see something exciting, the money would run out. We had money for just 6 months, and that would be the end of the whole dream. And then one chimpanzee, and I bet some of you know his name, it was David Greybeard, right. So it was David Greybeard who began losing his fear, and it was David Greybeard who one special day showed me that chimpanzees can use objects as tools. So I saw his hand reach out, break off a piece of grass, a stem, push it down into a termite mound, leave it for a moment, carefully pull it out, and all the soldier termites were biting on with their jaws, with their mandibles, and he picked them off with his lips and crunched them up. And if you were to see an animal doing that today, it wouldn't be exciting at all. But back then it was exciting because at that time, scientists believed only human beings could use and make tools. And so when I saw David Greybeard and then all his friends using and making tools, it was a very exciting time. And the National Geographic Society sent money so that I could carry on with the study after the first 6 months. So now we have been observing these chimpanzees for 55 years. So they have a very long life. And you know how your friends are all different, aren't they? They're not behaving in all the same way. Chimpanzees are exactly the same. They have their own personalities. They behave differently. Some are nice, some are nasty. And there are good mothers and bad mothers in chimp society, just as in human society. And we know today that in their biology, they're more like us than any other living creature. I'm not there at Gombe anymore. Does that mean that we've finished studying these chimpanzees? No. We have a research team there. And I get there twice a year for a few days. But I'm not doing the research anymore. And the reason I left Gombe is because in 1986, I found that chimpanzee numbers were dropping all across Africa. And they were dropping because they were losing their forests, they were being cut down, because human populations were growing and moving into chimp habitat, because chimpanzee mothers were being shot so that their babies could be stolen and sold, and because it was the beginning of what we call the bushmeat trade, and that is the commercial hunting of wild animals for food. So I had to try and help the chimps. That's when I began traveling around the world, talking about all these different problems, all the things we do to harm the world. And one of the worst of them, for me, is cutting down the forests. I mean, don't you think it would be sad if these beautiful trees were all cut down? And it would be especially sad if you were living here. Suppose you lived here, and suddenly all your home is gone. That's what's happening all over Africa, all over Asia, all over Latin America, all over North America. Forests are disappearing. So we all need plants. Even animals that eat other animals who've eaten plants. If the plants disappear, there's nothing left. We can't live. And a lot of people feel there's nothing we can do about it. But I don't believe that's true. There are scientists who will tell you it's too late, we can't change anything. I don't think it's too late. I think there's a window of time that we can start to change things around. That's what I'm fighting for. Really exciting moment for me. Here is Wunda, and she nearly died, but thanks to Rebecca, she came back from the dead almost. I mean, I saw her looking almost dead, but anyway, now she has a will to live, and here she is about to come out into this paradise. She's the 15th chimpanzee to get her freedom here, and we hope ultimately to have about 60 on the island, all waiting, and we have to remember that each single one of us matters. We have a role to play in this life, just as every small species does. Social media, because you can put out information and reach hundreds more people. We here think globally, act locally. Don't. If you think globally, you become filled with gloom. But if you take a little piece of this whole picture, my piece, our piece, this is what I can do here. I'm making a difference. And hi, wow, they're making a difference over there. And so are they, and so are they. And so gradually the pieces get filled in and the world is a better place because of you.